W.F. Howes presents an unabridged recording of the Orwell Tour by Oliver Lewis, narrated by Oliver Lewis. Introduction. The concept for this book came in the way any good idea should, not planned nor by design, but out of circumstance. I can't remember how I first came across George Orwell or his works. I have a hazy, very hazy, recollection of watching the film of 1984, aged 5 or 6. George Orwell was my father's favourite author. He was introduced to Orwell by his father, my grandfather, who I knew until I was 26 when he died in his 109th year. He was born in 1903, the same year as Eric Blair. I was fortunate as a budding historian to spend many hours with my grandfather towards the end of his life. He told me so much about the history of the 20th century, especially the first half, I feel almost as if I lived through it. My real enthusiasm for Orwell, which began properly in May 2015, post-dated my grandfather's death. It is a great regret to me that I never had the opportunity to broach Orwell with him, knowing that it would probably have led to a week's worth of discussion. In his library, much of which was acquired in the 1930s and 1940s when he read economic history at the London School of Economics, were copies of Animal Farm and The English People. The first Orwell work I read was Animal Farm, when I was around 13. After that, I probably read most of the rest of his work over the course of the next 10 years. I took a nice copy of Burmese Days with me on my year out in India after I left school, reading it on an enjoyably long sleeper train journey from Mumbai to Jaipur. I sent the copy back home, but unfortunately India Post did not deliver. The collected essays I read during a visit to California to stay with a friend from university, and I read one essay after another in between cycling trips across the Golden Gate Bridge and road trips to Yosemite National Park and Bodega Bay. Every time I reread Orwell's work, I am left with a re-energized perspective of it, with something new which I was not aware of on the first or second reading. Connecting with his work is to create a lifelong partnership between reader and writer. When I first set out on the Orwell Tour, I had no plan for what I would do or write about. I had resigned from my monotonous job in London to commence a master's degree in history, and planned a summer of enjoyment free from the shackles of the daily commute. I had arranged to visit Myanmar with a friend in the September, and prior to that, in the July, a week-long visit to some friends who own a small Scottish island close to the Isle of Jura, where Orwell had written 1984. My best friend from university is from Suffolk, and his parents had invited me to stay in August, close to Southwold, where Orwell and his...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?